Martina McBride, 60, has carved out a career for herself that is characterized by strength, honesty, and songs that give voice to those who are most in need. She has never been afraid to tell it how it is. Martina, however, has spoken almost little about George Strait, the man who is regarded as the king of country worldwide. Only music, courteous conversation, and the glory of shared stages have framed their relationship for decades. Now, however, Martina alludes to something much more profound in a unique and open moment, a hidden aspect of their relationship that admirers were unaware of. According to her, beneath the well-rehearsed acts and the meticulously curated public personas, there is a tale full of unspoken realities, untold lessons, and maybe even a secret that has the power to change our perceptions of them both. If this link is made public, it could not only alter their legacies, but also our perception of the core of country music. Martina McBride's tale started in Sharon, Kansas, a small hamlet of about 200 residents, long before she was seen standing under stadium lights, and her voice was heard on award stages and radio stations. There, routine tradition, and the constant rhythm of agricultural life were the foundations of a basic way of life. The scent of wheat fields, the sound of dairy cows, and the hum of tractors on the plains filled Martina Maria Schiff's early memories. She was born on July 29, 1966, the youngest of 4 children. She learned the virtues of diligence and modesty from her parents, Darrell and Jean Schiff, which would serve as the subdued foundation of her musical career. But more than grit, Sharon provided her something else. She got music from it. Darrell, her father, was more than just a farmer. The Shifters were a local country band that he headed. Martina learnt what it meant to perform in county fairs, church socials, and community halls, not from the gleaming glare of television, but from her neighbors' clinking glasses, laughter, and conversation. She began singing with her father's band at the age of 7. First timid, then more confident, she discovered her voice as a storyteller as well as a singer, while standing on makeshift stages and gazing out at familiar faces. The move home was packed with music, alongside George Jones and Merle Haggard. Records by Patti Cline, Tammy Wette, and Loretta Lynn reverberated through the walls. But Martina wasn't just a country girl. She became a versatile performer by absorbing the assertiveness of rock and the harmonies of pop. She was aware as a young child that a song had the ability to command attention and silence a room. Each performance at the fairground was more than just a drill. It served as a practice run for the life she was meant to lead. By high school, Martina was participating in talent competitions, singing harmonies, and playing piano. Her first audience was in small-town Kansas, which helped to mold her into a performer who never lost sight of the value of connection. She wasn't yet pursuing stardom, in contrast to many aspiring vocalists. She was learning how to evoke strong emotions in others. The work on her family's farm was never-ending, but she found meaning in the music she played with her father in those evenings. It took her some time to make the transition from Kansas to a larger platform. She started experimenting with various sounds while she was in her late teens. She pushed the boundaries of her style by playing in clubs in Wichita with a local rock band. Her stage persona was honed by the grit of rock, yet she still had a strong emotional connection to the storytelling heritage of country music. She met John McBride during this time, a motivated sound engineer whose technical proficiency matched her enthusiasm. Their combined dreams were greater than Sharon's. In addition to being personal, their marriage served as the foundation for her career. In 1989, John and Martina made the most significant risk of their life. They packed everything and headed for Nashville, the city where hopes were realized or dashed, leaving Kansas behind. This was Martina's opportunity to transform her neighborhood talent into a career that would eventually make her one of the most influential voices in country music. Martina's voice was influenced by Kansas fields and community dances. Martina McBride and her husband John loaded up their car and drove to Nashville, Tennessee, in 1989. It was a risk for Martina, an opportunity to see if the Sharon, Kansas, girl could compete with the best country music vocalists. Nashville, a city full of dreamers with talent resonating in every bar and corner, was harsh to newcomers. Martina soon discovered that having a strong voice was not enough to succeed in Music City. It required time, relationships, and unwavering persistence. The initial years were challenging. Martina found it difficult to establish herself, while John secured stable employment as a sound engineer. To keep them afloat, she took on odd jobs. Selling goods at Garbrooks concerts was one of those professions. Despite its unglamorous appearance, it was actually a backstage education. She watched G every night, learning how he interacted with audiences, how he operated on stage, and how professionalism was just as important as performance. Long after the shirts were folded and sold, she continued to think about these lessons. Martina, however, was determined to pursue her own goal. She wrote, practiced, and performed whenever she could during the night. Industry insiders started to take notice of her gradually but steadily. Meeting RCA Records' Joe Galante was her big break. He noticed a voice that could pierce through the packed Nashville scene after hearing her perform. Her life will alter dramatically when she signed with RCA. In 1991, Martina's official career started after she signed a record deal. Although it didn't reach the top of the charts, her 1992 first single, "The Time Has Come," was an important first step. It demonstrated that she had earned her position in the industry, and that she belonged there. From then on, her reputation as a formidable voice grew rapidly with each new song. Nashville, realizing she wasn't just another hopeful, started to respectfully whisper her name. She was a budding celebrity who had the power to inspire crowds. More than just a fight for survival characterized Martina's early years in Nashville. They served as the cornerstone for the artist she would eventually become. Her perseverance was built by every job, restless night, and performance in a smoky bar. And when her voice eventually started to spread beyond of the city, it brought with it the tale of a young woman from a tiny village who refused to let her hardships define her. Nashville had put her to the test, but it had also honed her into the performer who would eventually take the stage alongside the country music king. George Strait had already established himself as the quintessential representative of country music tradition before Martina McBride ever stood next to him. Strait, who was born in 1952 in Poteet, Texas, developed his career by consistently adhering to the genre's foundations, rather than using fads. Martina had already made George a household name by the time she reached Nashville. He became known as the King of Country because of his smooth baritone voice, his image as a clean cowboy, and his steady run of songs. George never deviated greatly from his approach, while other musicians adapted to changes in the industry. Authenticity, traditional melodies, and straightforward narration. Because he never feigned to be someone he wasn't, they had faith in him. George Strait sold over 100 million records worldwide and had more #1 hits than any other artist in history. By the time he announced his farewell, the Cowboy Rides Away tour, he had more than an amazing career. It was indestructible. The tour was more than a series of shows. Fans got the opportunity to bid farewell to a guy whose music had supported them through weddings, heartbreaks, and daily life. It was a farewell to an era. Every tour stop evolved into more than just a show. For admirers who grew up with George's voice as their life soundtrack, it was a cultural event and a pilgrimage. Stadiums were packed with tens of thousands of people, tickets sold out in minutes, and everyone in the crowd knew they were a part of history. Being asked to accompany George on this adventure was a challenge as well as an honor for Martina. Being on the same stage as the king meant entering a limelight that was brighter than most musicians would ever be. Being a part of something greater than oneself was another benefit, though. It was more than just a tour. It was the epilogue to one of the greatest tales in country music. In a world that frequently changed too quickly, George Strait stood as a symbol of constancy. He stood for consistency, tradition, and an unwavering passion for the music in the eyes of the fans. Martina wasn't simply getting ready for another performance as she got ready to go on stage next to him. Her tale would be inextricably linked to his, as she prepared to observe and take part in the end of an era. The country music community realized that something significant was happening when George Strait announced his final tour, The Cowboy Rides Away. This concert series wasn't your typical one. The king, who had shaped the genre's sound for almost 30 years, was saying goodbye. Desperate to be a part of what would turn out to be a once-in-a-lifetime event, fans rushed from all over the nation, some of them going thousands of miles. Every performance had an aura of nostalgia, happiness, and heartbreaking farewells that words could hardly express. One of the special guests selected to accompany George on this farewell tour was Martina McBride, a choice that immediately increased the emotional impact of the tour. It was an honor and a turning point in Martina's professional life. Her powerful vocals and poignant ballads had already earned her a legacy of her own. But she had a new experience when she went on tour with George, an opportunity to be together with a legend just as he was ending his live career. The performances focused on legacy in addition to music. In order to determine whether or not George's classics from Amarillo were true, fans sung along to every word. Additionally, the elegance, strength, and balance of Martina's own performances were a wonderful match for his. More than just individual sets were presented to the audience. On stage, they watched as two icons woven together a common narrative. Martina sensed the weight of the event behind the scenes. In interviews, she talked about how much she respected George, and how every aspect of his presentations was well planned. George was thorough but seamless in his approach, from greeting fans to ending a song. Her conviction that perseverance in music required not just skill, but also self-control, modesty, and the capacity to always keep the audience in mind, was strengthened by seeing him perform. Martina's participation offered a depth of experience to the tour for the spectators. Before George returned with another iconic hit, her ballads provided a moment of introspection as her voice soared through stadiums. She wasn't only an opener, according to the audience. She co-starred in a landmark farewell, someone whose skill matched the occasion's solemnity. Behind-the-scenes pictures and videos of their combined performances became viral on social media, extending the magic beyond of the actual arenas. The cowboy riding off was more than just a chance for Martina. It was a significant event in my life. It wasn't merely a goodbye tour she was on. At the exact time the ruler of the land took his last bow, she was entering history and permanently connecting her tale with him. The night Martina McBride joined George Strait for a furious performance of the country classic Jackson is one of the innumerable unforgettable moments of his Cowboy Rides Away tour that most exemplified the power of teamwork. Billy Ed Wheeler and Jerry Lieber wrote the song in 1963, and Johnny Cash and June Carter made it famous. It had a fun, feisty energy that needed two strong personalities to make it work. George and Martina were just that. George's suave baritone and Martina's soaring soprano blended together on stage to give the audience a reinvention rather than merely a cover. There was an instant and irrefutable chemistry. Martina, playing the irritated wife, responded to George's steady words about the husband being prepared to depart for Jackson, with witty banter and vocal fire. With their voices igniting like flint and steel, the light-hearted banter etched within the words came to life between them. It was more than a duet. It was a revival of country history, drama, and storytelling. One of the tour's most memorable moments was the show at A&T Stadium in Arlington, Texas. As the two idols exchanged sentences, tens of thousands of admirers cheered. Even experienced critics were taken aback by the way their voices blended. Fans praised the performance as one of the best live country duets of the decade, as videos of it rapidly went viral on social media. It was more than just the vocal combination that gave it its strength. It was the feeling of genuineness. Martina matched George's forceful, expressive delivery, while George, ever the stern cowboy, leaned into the song's humor with a rare looseness. They were able to combine tradition and freshness together, making the song wholly their own while paying tribute to Cash and Carter's legacy. Critics hailed the duet as one of the tour's highlights, emphasizing how George's solid presence grounded the performance, and Martina's exuberance energized it. Fans characterized the moment as electrifying, stating that the stadium's atmosphere changed, and that, for a brief period of time, everyone in the audience felt like they were a part of something bigger than themselves. The duet had significance beyond the cheers. It was more than just a hit with the masses. It served as a link between the country's sovereign and one of its strongest female voices, spanning generations. It demonstrated to Martina that she could compete with George Strait as an equal, not as a visitor or an entrant. For George, it was an instance that demonstrated his admiration for Martina as a creative person who could share his limelight. Jackson evolved into more than just a song in the course of his farewell. Through partnerships that preserved the essence of country music, it became a statement and a reminder that even as one era drew to an end, music will continue to change. The peaceful moments from the Cowboy Rides Away tour are what Martina McBride remembers the most. Even though the world witnessed George Strait and Martina McBride sharing stages and performing memorable duets, the times when the crowd's noise subsided into silence as the lights went down, she frequently talked about how she was most impressed by George's professionalism. He approached rehearsals with the same consideration and modesty as a young artist attempting to establish himself, despite his legendary stature. Martina remembers a specific late-night sound check when George stayed behind to assist younger crew members with equipment adjustments. Rather than going to his dressing room, he taught without ever making it feel like a lesson. He was gentle, patient, and totally involved. After seeing this, Martina understood that his fame was based on more than simply his vocals and song list. His treatment of those around him served as the foundation for it. It was a surprise to her. She saw in George an example of leadership based on honesty, respect, and consistency, rather than ego. According to Martina, working with him altered her perspective on her own career. Standing in the middle of the stage and singing was not enough. It was all about being graceful when no one was looking. She became more aware of these little moments, the more time she spent with George. Backstage, jokes were exchanged before performing. Peaceful discussions about writing songs. Even when things went awry, he remained unflappable. On certain nights, a performance was in danger of being derailed due to technical difficulties. George, however, never became agitated or lost his temper. Instead, he would continue as if nothing had happened, grin and comfort the team. Martina believed that those behind-the-scenes views showed the king of country's genuine nature, a man whose modesty matched his notoriety. These encounters not only inspired her but also challenged her to develop. She started playing around more with her stage presence and harmonies. She discovered that being real meant not just singing the truth but also living it. Thanks to George's trust and willingness to work with others, every lesson, every shared giggle, and every quiet time contributed to her development, both personally and professionally. In retrospect, Martina stated that joining George on that tour provided her much more than just a professional achievement. It provided her with a set of principles to live by: kindness, patience, and the realization that character is just as important to true craftsmanship as skill. For Martina McBride, what started out as a business partnership on George Strait's Cowboy Rides Away tour quickly became into something more. A friendship that lasted long after the stage lights went off, built on mutual respect, trust, and principles. In a field where connections are sometimes short-lived and transactional, Martina felt a connection with George, someone who was aware of the burden of upholding a heritage, in addition to the responsibilities of the company. Consistency, rather than extravagant gestures, was the foundation of their relationship. Martina frequently talked about how simple it was to be around George, and how readily talks flowed, whether they were about music, family, or the difficulties of remaining true to oneself in a society that is always trying to reinvent itself. Following the trip, their relationship was evident in public appearances. Even outside of the official tour setting, fans observed the warmth in their interactions, the way they laughed together, and the comfort with which they shared a stage, whether at award shows, charity galas, or special performances. It has nothing to do with the staged chemistry of two celebrities. It was the sincere solace of companions who valued one another's personalities and artistic abilities. George, who was reticent by nature, hardly ever gave personal recommendations. He did, however, publicly commend Martina, referring to her as one of the best voices in country music. Martina also never missed a chance to emphasize George's steadfastness and humility, which she believed were uncommon in musicians of his caliber. Their camaraderie also included personal assistance. Martina supported George's unique initiatives and humanitarian endeavors, and George was there to celebrate her milestones. Martina stated that she could always rely on George's counsel behind closed doors, not as a superior mentor, but rather as a colleague who was aware of the difficulties she was facing. It was a connection that gave her confidence that genuine friendships might last in a field that is frequently tainted by egos and competition. Their connection lasted for years after the Cowboy Rides Away tour was over, serving as a reminder that although music can unite musicians, respect and genuineness are what keep them together. Martina saw the trust she developed with George as more than a passing reference in her professional life. It was one of the most significant collaborations of her life, demonstrating that real legends leave behind more than simply songs, they leave behind enduring personal bonds. Martina McBride, 60, is having a rare moment of introspection, looking back at the connections and experiences that shaped her journey, as well as a career that brought her from the wheat fields of Sharon, Kansas to the largest country music venues. Beyond accolades, Martina now talks about thankfulness, resiliency, and the things she's learned along the way, regardless of chart success or awards. She recalls the young lady who battled to establish herself in Nashville, the artist who found herself standing shoulder to shoulder with George Strait as he took his final bow, the small-town kid who sang with her father's band, and the wife who relied on her husband's unwavering support. She was molded as a person and as a performer by each chapter. Martina frequently claims that her career in music was never for stardom. It was about making a connection. She had always thought that music had the capacity to uplift, soothe, and heal. and every performance she delivered was guided by that belief. At 60, she is more aware than ever that her voice served as a medium for her listeners' experiences, as well as her own memories. Her tone, however, softens when she talks of George Strait. Martina admits that performing alongside him changed the course of her career. She was given a model for longevity by witnessing his self-control, humility, and unwavering regard for the audience. She acknowledges that his example motivated her to focus more on creating a body of work that would last throughout time rather than following fads. Because of the bond they developed, rather than the attention it garnered, their partnership became one of the pillars of her career. Martina found in George a dependable presence and a reminder that genuine talent comes with dignity and respect in a field where partnerships are frequently flimsy. Looking ahead, Martina continues to see opportunities. With the same enthusiasm she put into her first concerts, she hopes to record new music, mentor up-and-coming musicians, and support women's voices in country music. She intends to use her position to inspire others in the same way that she was inspired, rather than simply fading away. However, there is a subtle reveal in her reflection as well, which has admirers talking. She didn't talk much about her relationship with George Strait for years, maybe because she respected his privacy, or because certain relationships are hard to explain. Martina now suggests, however, that their relationship was deeper than the general public ever realized. A bond based on silent trust, common principles, and a profound comprehension of what it means to devote one's life to music. Her comments are interpreted in a variety of ways by fans. Some interpret it as an indication of a secret that may one day be revealed, while others take it as an admission of a friendship that is deeper than anyone realized. Whatever the case, Martina's thoughts at age 60 serve as a reminder that the best legacies are etched in human ties that last long after the last note fades, not just in songs or chart records. In retrospect, Martina admits that each obstacle, victory, and teamwork contributed to the fabric that shaped her into the person she is today. She also takes with her the teachings she learned from George Strait about family, faith, and perseverance as she looks to the future. Every note, every collaboration, every challenge has been part of a journey I am profoundly grateful for, she remarked in a recent reflection, which may have been her most telling statement. As fans listen, they can't help but wonder if Martina's disclosure of George Strait will ultimately alter our preconceived notions about the king of the nation.